Colin Damon here from Games, Brains in a Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial. Sure, and they made what into a TV series. Hey, it's Tomb Raider, The Legend of Lara Croft, and we're up to episode number 3, talking through the show, episode by episode, giving you our rundown and thoughts on it. It is episode 3, Living Midnight, directed by Cassie Urban and written by Tasha Hyo. We pick up where we left off with the tidal wave bearing down on Lara and Jonah. It hits them and they're knocked into the water. Lara gets separated from Jonah and almost drowns in that turbulent water. It destroys the nearby village, but Lara is able to survive, waking up amongst the chaos as the water recedes. She searches for Jonah, finding nothing but his necklace pearls, and because of that, believes him to be dead. Which is fair enough. You can be like, well, she didn't see her body. Listen, it was a tidal wave that just tries to destroy the city, and the pearls he wore around his neck are buried under like sand and mud and stuff. Yeah, I would also think that Jonah died.
Yeah, I mean it's a natural reaction, you know. It's a tidal wave, of course. Like it sucks you in. So
Exactly. Do you know what you don't need then? You don't need Charles coming along and being all like, "Oh, shouldn't have friends, Miss Croft," and holds a knife to her throat. He demands the Peril Stone, aka the ruby, and they end up fighting. Before Lara goes, well, if you want it so much, take it, and throws the jade box, but he grabs it, allowing her to escape. I mean, we will see later on, because my initial thought is maybe check inside at first, bruv. But, you know, he will do that off screen, basically. But yeah, that
yeah,
was my immediate thought. Like, yeah, she threw the box, but doesn't mean the stone was in there.
yeah. I'm pretty sure Johnny Depp only covered some Pirates of the Caribbean. So,
I don't know. Did he? I've only seen those movies like once, and I've only seen
yeah,
like the first 3.
it's when like, the heart was going to be in the chest, but they take a chest and there's only a head in the chest. So,
The heart? What you? Oh, right.
uh,
You know
uh,
what? Right.
David Jones's
Oh, the
heart.
squid face dude. Right. Fair
Yeah,
enough. Okay. Right. Well, that's as fantastical as this story. So let's carry on. Well, Lara now contacts Zip and tells her that Jonah is dead, and he takes it badly and asks her to come home, but she refuses and declares that she's going to finish what she started and find the truth behind his stones. He wants her to grieve. The whole thing is like, look, man, it's okay to feel pain. She's basically, the whole thing about Lara is she's running away from the pain that she's felt by loss and stuff like that. But she ignores him and asks him to get her an item and send it to her in Beijing. This is where we go to next, as we see Lara calling Sam, but her call is interrupted when Zip shows up, wanted to help her. Much to Lara's chagrin, she didn't want Zip to come, but he's here nonetheless. She's not happy, but Zip reflects on Jonah, and this softens her response, and together they go into a secret international guild that restores and repairs artifacts, then returns them to the rightful place. This does mean that Lara is actually less than welcome by the curator, Eva Tong. And I did like that, the fact that like, you're not actually that welcome, you're a treasure hunter, a thief.
mm.
So, like, in their eyes, because basically they restore and then return these objects, you know? So, like, it's like you wouldn't be friendly to Lara Croft.
I like the aspect because obviously from where she is in this to what she becomes,
Yeah.
it's a very clever little play in it. Yeah.
Well, Lara reveals the Sword of Divinity to Eva, who accuses her father of stealing it and gets sarcastic about Lara returning it. But Lara's handing it over for information on the Peril Stones. However, after all of this, Eva does agree to reveal the mythology behind the stones, which is basically an ancient Chinese story. Now, I'm going to sum it up in a nutshell. Chaos and order at war since the dawn of time. A goddess tamed them, and when balanced, the world was created. Mankind came along and did our usual bullshit, resulting in the scales becoming unbalanced and tipping in the favor of chaos. It almost destroyed us. So the goddess took mankind's 4 greatest evils and trapped the excess of those evils into 4 gemstones: power, wrath, greed, and betrayal. Then the goddess sent the stones to the far corners of the world, never to be found until now. It's a very simple story to follow. It is. And the idea of it being 4 stones to find is very real video gaming.
It is, but I think your explanation was definitely a lot better than the way they tried to explain it.
It is particularly can be quite confusing in places. But I wanted to sum it up. Zip is impressed by the story and Eva claims that the Peril Stones don't exist and that it's a creation myth. And I really like that as well, because of course it's a creation myth. It's a mankind creation myth. Should the stones be brought back together, the scales will tip back to chaos, and that is the end times. Afterwards, in a cat coffee shop, they discover that one of the stones is in the hands of a local mobster named Elvin Kaya. Her family have had that stone for a long time, and apparently it has exerted its influence over her family. Laura needs to get into a garden facility, but is impatient to get started. Zip suggests, look, take a break while I compile a schematic, but that's something that Lara doesn't really want to do. It's like she dares not stop in case her demons catch up with her. However, she does go to a quiet coffee shop where she inevitably starts to reflect on Jonah's death. She gets a visitor, though. It's Charles. He's arriving and reveals, hey, empty box. E.g., I opened the box, found it was empty, and I've come after you. He now properly introduces himself and claims that they're the same. His father was killed by an organization called The Light, whereas her father was, of course, killed by Trinity. This is presumably where your eyes gloss over again about Trinity and things like this, right?
Yep.
Well, you played the reboot trilogy. You know that Trinity are basically the big villains of all the games, and that eventually Lara will defeat them. He claims to be a misunderstood hero and wants to peril stones to use their power against the Light and other evil organizations. His attitude is highly unlikable, though, even if what he says to her does resonate. However, he seems not to care who he hurts en route to his mission, and that gets her back up. She throws coffee in his face and then she leaves, and he orders her to stay out of his way. So it might seem like we've got a nuanced bad guy here. Ooh, someone that thinks they're doing good. Like he wants to destroy an organization that's hurt him, but is going to do it via evil routes, right?
Yeah.
I was intrigued by Charles. God, this character's going to fucking suck as this show goes on. Oh, we'll get to that in future episodes. But right now, I was like, oh, it's a bad guy who's got layers and might actually be the sort of like the yin and yang to Lara Croft, two sides of a coin.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this story's been played so many times in many different films and TV series. So,
Yeah.
so I'm pretty sure I know where it's going to go, and I'm sure you are too. But what I liked about it was more development for Lara too. You know,
Yeah.
we got to see her emotional side, and I love the whole museum scene with the fact that she's not trusted, and
Yep.
how we know what eventually she's going to be developed into.
As this talk through goes on, I'm going to get more and more critical of this show as it goes on. But one area I won't be critical about is Lara. I think that's the one thing the show does really well, dealing with her development and sort of creating a picture of how the girl that I knew in the first Tomb Raider game, the reboot, the 2013 game, how that person has got to here and how they will become the ass-kicking Angelina Jolie style character that we know from the main Tomb Raider games. As night falls, we see that Charles is using possessed people to monitor her. Sometime later, Lara breaks into Kaya's compound in an attempt to take one of the stones. A very difficult task as it's actually on her person and it seems to have control over her. It's all very exciting, especially as she has to be inventive and utilizes a caged tiger as a good distraction method. She gets the stone, but it takes control of her, causing her to kill people violently. Chaos being unleashed, but Lara is able to break its spell and throw the sword away as she comforts a dying soldier. Kaya now arrives, but Lara is able to trap the stone within the box and break its spell. And free Kaya tells her to get the stone away from her, declaring that the stone will curse her. This entire section is great. The
Yeah.
infiltration of the facility, the action scenes, the power of the stone, the sort of villainy but not villain, someone that's been controlled by it. I loved all of this.
Yeah, so it was a very good action sequence, and it's what you expect from Tomb Raider.
Yeah. Yeah, you do have these elements where it's not all about tombs sometimes. Sometimes it's a bit more modern and a bit more this, you know. I liked it a lot.
Yeah,
Heading back to her apartment, Laura finds someone has broken in and Zip has been knocked out. Laura rushes in and is hit over the head by Jonah. I'm glad they didn't drag this one out. Like, because we kind of knew that Jonah wasn't going to die off screen. You know what I
yeah,
mean? But Jonah is being controlled by Charles, who simply steals the stone from her. Charles then merges the two stones together as the power begins to erupt, causing a massive explosion that blows out the windows of the apartment. And that's where that episode ends. This is solid. This feels like a good episode for developing things. It feels like actually in this episode they've gone, hey, we don't need to develop Laura as much. So let's put a little bit of time into Charles, but also now let's push the story. Let's create this the series as story. Where are we going to go with this, and how are we going to get to it? And this is what this episode felt like.
Yeah, so they covered a lot of aspects in this episode, and obviously for me, who's not knowledgeable of the games, apart from that the coffee cafeteria part, I think the episode's pretty straightforward to follow.
Yeah, I think so too. I think this is where it's got its own story. This is not game related. Here, there's nothing here that ties to the game really. The games, aside from general Tomb Raidery stuff and Jonah, but that's the character, and that's nonetheless. I feel like this is where it finally starts to establish its own story, and that's quite good for people like yourself. Episode 3, Living Midnight. You got any thoughts on this one or share? Let us know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. If you'd like to see more content like this, please consider hitting the subscribe button. It is gratefully appreciated. You can find us over at gbhbl.com, our full website where reviews, news and so much more goes up daily. We're also on all social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, at gbhbl. Just search for gbhbl and you will find us out there. We also have merchandise on sale. You can access the shop via the website.